History and culture between the covers of a book. We'll find what has been and what could come each time that we look. Elders, raise your pens and take a stand. Your ink brings life to South Sudan. If you'll make your mark for those to come, our generations all can join as one. Let's read, break out the books between the lines, finding outlooks and stories of all those who came before you. Feed your brain with knowledge gained from those who lived to liberate South Sudan and left us all with their truth. There are tears from the eyes of our nation, we fear for you. Information is lost when oral culture is what we choose. But Africa, world books, knows that we must take a stand. That only history leads us and liberates South Sudan. Let's read, break out the books between the lines, finding outlooks and stories of all those who came before you. Feed your brain with knowledge gained from those who lived to liberate South Sudan and left us all with their truth. Encourage the aging generation who fought for South Sudan to write their memoirs so the youth will all understand that our nation is young, but our history's richer than gold. That our people are strong and our stories are worth being told. Let's read, break out the books between the lines, finding outlooks and stories of all those who came before you. Feed your brain with knowledge gained from those who lived to liberate South Sudan and left us all with their truth. Let's read, break out the books between the lines, finding outlooks and stories of all those who came before you. Feed your brain with knowledge gained from those who lived to liberate South Sudan and left us all with their truth.
Dear viewers and friends, you are all invited to watch and also to join the programs. Tonight, our guest is Dr. Raphael Abiem from America. And the person to facilitate the talk is Paul George, a friend of Africa Wellwood. So, Paul George, welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Welcome to Dr. Abiem. Today we're going to talk about his book, or he is going to talk about his book, and which was originally published as The Mission to Niagara and Back, the journey of a Southern Sudanese boy to Mobutu's Congo to buy guns, and that story has been taken up and published in Warriors of Abyei, which was edited by Dr. Francis Deng, I believe. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, Peter's got it up there. Warriors from Abyei. Yeah. Okay. So Raphael, Dr. Raphael is highly accomplished, and he's come from Sudan. I'm not sure. Maybe Raphael, you can introduce yourself and say a few words about your background and how you came to write the book.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you very much, Peter Lowell, and yourself, George. And you know, I'm quite pleased that I would talk about this, which I call a pamphlet, actually. It was at the spur of a moment that I wrote it, and the spur of a moment it reads like. So not much of a depth you would expect of it. It is the impressions of a child, and therefore, you know, depth is not one of the aspects of a 9-fathom child. Let's call it a 9-year-old child, not any deeper than that. And the book itself starts with a non sequitur, and that is you have a child and a gun next to a child, which is a horror nobody wants to think about. But behind that posture of a child carrying a gun is a real gun, a true gun aimed at not only the head of this child, but targeting the entire community, and deeper than the immediate community that the gun of the other side, you know, was targeting. It all started when I was studying in elementary school in Northern Sudan. And well, the problem is that if I start that way, then I will narrate the entire book. So perhaps I would benefit from a bit of a direction from you if there are selective episodes that are more relevant to a talk like that. Then come in with an entire gambit of the story.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Let's go for 10-minute break seconds. Yep, welcome back. Thank you.
Okay. Would you say that the theme of the book is freedom? Is that the theme?
Well, the entire thing is about hurt, and the only payback for such a hurt is freedom. So freedom lingers throughout the book. And freedom from what are the details, or the devil that is that bedeviled my life to actually, you know, take up such an endeavor at such an early age. So should I delve in?
Yeah. So, did you see yourself as being special at that early age? Did you feel some sort of calling to do that, or you were just
By all
driven by?
means, no at all. Not at all. I was just an ordinary child, you know, growing up absolutely dinka in a village. Okay. Never spoke a word of English language. Never spoke a word of Arabic. Not a paper or a pen in my village. It was all native intelligence. And our teachers were the elements in nature. You know, they taught us values, they taught us everything. And then I come to school to encounter a culture that is completely alien to mine.
Yeah.
That is in Abyei, the town. But then I went further in pursuit of that culture to Northern Sudan, and that's where I began to see things that had to awaken in a child, an adult waiting to grow. But there is no time for that adult to grow but now. And therefore, the drive towards having bigger ideas than yourself, bigger ideas than you can physically entertain. It's like a small, well, by necessity, a rat is a small animal, but if you infuse it with the adrenaline of an elephant, it is that adrenaline that will kill the rat itself. And I knew the kind of anger that I took in at an early age was slated to kill me. Or if I survive it, I would survive it a completely changed personality. So here I am in Northern Sudan, completely immersed in a milieu which is not mine, in a culture which is not mine, in a place where my color stands out as at once disturbing and, you know, worth of mockery. All that happened around me, and I began to imbibe that bitter, you know, spirit from the way we played with children and calling us charcoal, to the way we became Christians ultimately, and therefore, you know, calling us, you know, the firewood of hell because of that Christian element, you know, in us. An ominous name such as Raphael automatically reminds some people of Israel, and therefore, you know, a non-wanted. And then there were bigger things happening in the country. 1964 was there. The overthrowal of the regime was afoot and finally happened. A regime that we thought was the only, you know, entity that persecuted people from South Sudan.
Yeah.
So when it was overthrown on the 21st of October, 1964, we jubilated. We thought that all these things that had bedeviled us would disappear in the instance of that liberating moment of the success of the revolution. Well, the revolution came, and then a bunch of new crop of leaders barged in, some dressed in flowing gowns, others in immaculate European suits, but they were at heart very local, doing the local thing, promoting the very local ideas that had pushed me against the wall even as a child. But then hope was still pervasive. We still lived hope that with this new crop of people who, when they spoke English, we thought they were English, When they spoke Arabic, we thought they were from yonder, from Arabia. But when they did their local thing, they were as local as anything, and therefore as oppressive.
So there wasn't any change.
Yes.
There was no change, basically.
There was no change.
Yeah.
There was no change. I mean, elegant people, yes. Educated people, yes. But rooted in their own culture and their own ways that are tainted with a sense of superiority, or definitely yes, it was. So, so the Catholic school in which I was, so that things were becoming a little bit dicey. Instead of expecting full peace in the Sudan, there were signs that things were going to the dogs more so than anything else. And nothing made it more evident than when South Sudanese thought one of their own, a politician, Clement Mboro, was disappeared. So South Sudanese rioted in Khartoum and they were killed in their numbers. Now, that created an atmosphere of instability all throughout the country, and we could feel it in that slippery rock of a town in which I was in Western Sudan. No, nothing would reach us. Not good news, not good, bad news, but this time around, the bad news reached us. And the town was as inclement as Khartoum must have been when South Sudanese took to riots.
Yeah.
So we were advised, towards the end of November, that we have to go home because things might go bad. So we were sent home. We passed through Al-Mudlet and made it home. But not long after, terrible news came. It was early 1965, when all South Sudanese were all collected and stored in police depots. And I use the word stored advisedly, because at that point, they were reduced to non-human, and therefore they were just stored in large rooms awaiting their disposal. Of course, the goods they are. And meanwhile, the police, which is the government itself, the citizenry in the town of Mudlet were busy buying fuel, perhaps matches. And the hour came in which they doused the depots with fuel and set it alight. Numbers have differed. Some say the victims therein were about 600. Others have put the number quite above that. But it was done in a chorus. It happened at the same time in the next town called Babanusa, in which another number of people were incinerated. Now the devil was unleashed. The little fear in a little child became overwhelming. A tsunami in a child's chest must be destructive. But it didn't destroy that child. And that's why I still talk to you today. And, I came home and I was thinking, why this brutality? What is behind it? Is it the hearts of people gone bad? Or is there a deep ideological depth to what was going on?
Yeah.
It was only later, and it's actually directed where I have gone in pursuit of knowledge. I've done law, I've done theology, all in the quest to understand what was it or what is it coming from Abyei. It is still and is, not a was. We're still suffering exactly the same thing, in the same mode, in the same manner. It hasn't changed an iota. And I arrived at a conclusion that it is deeply ideological, because I have found some of the most beautiful-hearted people in Northern Sudan. But among them were elements that harbored the bellicose depth of their ideology. And of course, it's a religious ideology, it is a racial ideology as well. And this is not a single brush that I'm using to paint the entire North Sudan. I must apologize, it is not that. But I cannot overemphasize how such elements have come to the fore and have been the ones dictating the policies of the country and the direction to which the country should go. I don't know if you would want to have a question rather than have a monologue for myself. Yeah.
No, it's fascinating. Your whole story is so very powerful. Maybe just going forwards to the present or even the future. How do you see the relationship now between North and South? Do you think there's a possibility of some reconciliation or amalgamation of the two countries, or what, or just some peaceful resolution?
It's a three-pronged question, and that is, the Sudan itself is yet to find itself. Sudanese people are on one hand, the ideological drivers are on the other. And until the Sudan reconciles itself, the people versus ideological handlers, we cannot jump the fray and begin to talk about the unity between Sudan and South Sudan. Because the people of the Sudan have, for many months now, since 2019, been trying to shed off the yoke of Islamism in the north. It carries the beautiful word Islam on it, but actually it is a few deeply corrupt individuals that cleverly use verses from the Quran to mislead the partial blind, which is half of the Sudanese population. How many people in Sudan are that deeply educated to understand the nuances of Islam in yellow books as well as in clear books, say the Quran and the Hadith? Okay, very few individuals have that capacity. And the lower the capacity of people to understand, the easier it is to mislead them. And the easier it is to even torture them, okay, turn them into firewood and make them believe it is the will of God they are doing. So Sudan itself has a long way to say, finally, we have found our core. They are still looking for it. It is slippery, it is mercurial, and most probably they will not get the tail of it. And it will take a long time. They almost came close to it when they brought the prime minister. That is a Muslim, all right, but a Muslim that lives and let live. Now we have a crop in Khartoum that see life as completely written in their names. You know, the name of those few that are handling the state are the ones that must live. Should the others live, it will be incidental, or their life is nothing but dependent on those that lead the country. So you can see how not only premature, but even unthinkable to think of the two countries coming together. They are wedged apart by eons of ideas, worldview. And as for me, where I come from a piece of land, like a disturbing little strip of land, disturbing both north and south. Okay.
On the border.
On the borders.
Yeah.
A small place called Abyei,
Abyei,
which is proving a headache to both Sudan and to South Sudan. So South Sudan looks at it as the unexploded ordnance, which if we push it too hard, could actually wreck the Sudan in a way or the other and bring about a war between the two countries. And therefore, either we find a good way to diffuse it, this unexploded ordnance, and they have not found that way to diffuse it yet. If anything, they seem to load that ordnance with more powder so that it becomes Putin-like kind of a weapon. So Abyei, though completely South Sudanese, and they cannot be anything but South Sudanese, okay, we cannot discount experience. And it is not because on the basis of ethnicity. There are people in the north that are as black as we are, and those are the people of the Nuba Mountains and the Blue Nile. And they even fought the war alongside South Sudan. But is that the reason why Abyei wanted to cleave towards the South? No, it is experiences such as I have recounted. Experiences that say, even if we were to completely surrender, we all become Muslims, we will still be treated like Darfur. Because Darfur is the most Islamic, portion of the Sudan. They are the teachers of Islam to the northern part of the Sudan. And yet, nobody sees their Islam. Their color looms over the faith, okay? Their blood is thicker than religion. So even if Abyei were to say, let us move north, okay, they are still going to face the genocidal policies that have been not in a store, but unleashed on them. So Abyei, as much as possible, would actually oppose the idea of South ever creating a false reproach more with the Sudan. And I'm not talking about the Sudan, the people. I'm talking the Sudan run by Islamists. And the Islamists are not people of al-Bashir. It's wrong to think of it that way, okay? They were before al-Bashir. Sadiq al-Mahdi was an Islamist. Okay. Nimeri was an Islamist. Okay. Sadiq number 2 was, that is before 1969, was an Islamist. Okay. The military regime that was overthrown in 1961 were Islamists. If they were not Islamists, they would not have closed the schools in South Sudan in 1964 and created the Sunday riots in South Sudan. It was in a bid to stamp out any contradiction to the worldview they wanted to establish as the policy of the Sudan. And therefore, I would say since 1956, Sudan had been ruled by Islamists. And let anybody who thinks otherwise, I invite people to question me in that regard. And I would pride myself that I'm not a child, I'm the old man I am, and therefore I will be able to give more data as to why I think they were all Islamists.
Mm. Yeah, thank you. Thanks. Peter, now, do you have some questions, Peter? Or...
Yeah, okay. Let's go for dear viewers, this is Peter Deng from Africa World Books. Today, our guest speaker is Dr. Raphael Abiem. He's a child soldier who left to Nangala at the age of 9. And I think he's among the first lost child, if not a lost boy, of South Sudan. Sudan have had many wars for many years, and he was very courageous. In his books, you talk of a child soldier by choice. Can you tell us what were the challenges and what caused you to be a child soldier? And how did your parents feel when you left at the age of 9?
I'm the youngest of my brothers. And, and when I decided to leave, I didn't tell my brothers. I didn't tell my father. But they found out a few months later why I left. And that is after the Mudled affair, in which people were burned, the entire Abyei area was burned down in 1965. And when I came from the bush, I found my father, having crossed the Nyamora, the river, to the other side, and, living under the tree. And a big chief he was. Okay, under the tree. And everybody else was living under the tree. So I had the faith to come to my father and say, look, you see, have you ever lived under a tree in your life? He said, no. I said, well, okay, then what has brought you here under this glorious tree? It's nothing but what I saw earlier on. And it is what fuels my anger. And I came to tell him that I'm taking a long walk, crossing so many horizons, okay, to ultimately reach a country called the Congo, in which people are different, cultures are different, many dangers on the road, but I am going because I will never see anything worse than I had already seen as a child. And therefore, the fuel that gave me the alacrity, the power to actually withstand what I had to withstand in the journey was that anger. Anger is energy that far supersedes solar power. It supersedes, fossil fuel. It is more than nuclear. and it fueled my body efficiently for 2 years until it was deflated at some point when what we went for was not bought, that is, the guns. Because guns means pushing away the danger. It doesn't mean killing anybody. No, it means warding off the danger. And if you can ward off the danger, people live. And wrong is a person who lives in a place where dog kill man, man kill dog, and still depends on his fingernails. Okay, doesn't work that way. So maybe I lost track. There was something a little bit more pointed in your question that I seem not to have answered.
Yeah,
yes.
Because after you traveled that long, so what was life like? You used to have 1 meal a day, which was always at 4 when you were in Niagara.
Yeah.
So why was it at 4 all the time?
Why was?
The meals, you used to have 1 meal a day.
Oh yeah, 1 meal a day. Yes, of course. I mean, those are some of the things to expect. 1 meal a day, and one of the meals I would never forget. I can be invited to the house of the most affluent person, and I will not remember that meal 60-something years later. But that 1 meal I would remember in the Congo, in which we went to, for lack of a worse word, a restaurant. And we were served with fish, and we, hungrily devoured that fish until we stumbled upon a human nail. And the reason was, Niagara, the Simba were just defeated. That is the revolutionaries of the Congo. They were just defeated, and they were being killed, like whatever, and thrown into the river Niagara. And it, as fish fed over the dead bodies, human beings fed over the fish. And I had my portion, perhaps the digested part of human flesh, and it was that nail that led us to this, horrible realization. But war is not fun. Whoever thinks it is, better look for a shrink. I live in America, so I will use the American word. Better look for a shrink. There's war is terrible. But terrible as it is, it's sometimes necessary.
Okay, you returned back in February 1966.
Mm-hmm.
So what were the challenges you faced while coming back from Congo to Sudan or South Sudan?
Well, it's the same long journey again, 1,000 kilometers from Niagara all the way to Abyei, outside Abyei. And on the way, all types of challenges, crossing rivers that are infested with creatures. And I remember one instance in which we were on Jur River, crossing over to Tone side. And, young men jumped into the river, they slapped the water like crazy, and in a few minutes they were on the other side of the river. Okay, hooray, you did it. And another batch. And the last batch, well, the before last batch, a guy called Abyei, huge individual. The type, if he was in the West, would have been a heavyweight champion.
Yes.
And I thought,
51, yeah.
Yes, and I thought, this guy is going to give the water a run for its money. If you see, slap it like crazy, and in no time he would be on the other side. And yes, he did perform as expected. What wave would withstand the heavy-duty arms of Adal? Not a single wave, we thought. But then, as he was close to touching the bank of the river on the other side, something wrapped him and disappeared him for a minute. Then waved him a little bit. We all saw that. And we saw it was something, whether coincidental or what, we saw the head of a turtle. And we thought it was a huge turtle that was, wreaking havoc on our fellow. Now, I was corrected later on by Jacob Gilakol, who told me that we have unjustifiably accused the turtle. It must have been, a crocodile that disappeared the man. But then, before this man jumped into the water, I was seized with this eagerness to actually try my arms too. And I almost jumped into the water, and somebody grabbed me in the air almost as I fell into the water in a bid to beat the waves of Jew River. Oh no, it was not easy. It was not easy. He pulled me back, and that's how he saved my life.
Yeah,
and we thought about making a raft. We made a raft, and I was put on that raft with some 3 other people and the weapons we had, and we crossed the river. But then our brother Adal was gone in that experience. The thing is, I don't know where fear had gone in me. My question is, what happened to me actually? Because I lost all fear, actually, because of those experiences. And that in itself is a mental condition when you cannot fear. Now go ahead. Yes.
You don't fear it now?
Up to now, I find it very difficult to fear anybody. Whatever comes to my mind, if I think it is true, okay, I wouldn't ask, is this a president or a general? I wouldn't care. I'll say what I have to say.
And while coming back from Congo, you were attacked in Languo camps. So who were the attackers?
Okay. Nyangara. Yeah, Nyangara. Yeah, Nyangara was this most beautiful place in Western Equatoria, Ezandeland. There used to be a big hospital there, leprosy hospital. And we camped deep in the forest, a forest we trusted, actually. We really trusted it. It was our garrison. We went and fetched food, came in, completely convinced that there wouldn't be any danger at all. And the more we believed in nature, the more protected we felt. And the less prepared we were actually to defend ourselves. We relegated the entire thing to the trees, to the shrubs, to snakes, to little insects that bite people and penetrate the toenails and so on. Until one day a friend of mine and I went for, to go and see a Thursday market. And that was my first time out there. So we went there, we enjoyed the scenery of things being sold, and things people eat, and so on. Coming back, in one of those ruins, the hospitals that I told you about, my friend, a much older person, and he had a gun with him, was summoned by the call of nature, and he had to go and, do his thing. So for some reason, he handed me the gun, and that was my first time to have my hand on a gun. I felt elate. For the first time, did I think I was a true warrior. I carried money before that, and I never thought I was rich. I went and handed over the money that was tied on my back all throughout the journey to the leadership. And all I wanted of them was to buy guns. I never saw a gun out of that bundle of money that I carried on my back and took off the top skin on my back. And I didn't care, let my skin go to where it should. But those guns should come back and help my people. Never worked that way. Never worked that way. Anyway, as I was waiting for the gentleman, in my flirting around with the weapon, I happened to press on the trigger, and the gun went off. And my good brother came back. Of course, fear is stricken at first, only to find that it was a false alarm. It was not an attack. It was I who mishandled the weapon. Well, I could see blood in his eyes. Very angry, but what would he do with me? Anyway, we went back to the camp. And while in the camp, well, we had to attend the roll call, the evening roll call. And the gentleman had to report the incident because one bullet shot counts against the collectivity of bullets we have. And therefore, such a waste meant a lot. And, so he narrated the entire story. The good thing is I was a corporal, actually, lording it over much older people. I don't know whether I was being flattered or whether I had earned those stripes or what, I don't care, but I had them. And I could order old people to give me a salute and I would enjoy it. But then it is that little incentive they took away from me that evening. They said, you have done a terrible thing. And besides, you have been talking too much actually about where the money has gone. Okay, because this happened after we came back from the Congo without guns. So my mouth was already overtaking me. And again, being a mouth that seemed to fear nothing, okay? I said what I had to say. I talked to officers that I had to talk to tell them how frustrated I am, okay? I'm not going to use those guns. You elders that will use them, but I want to see them in your hands. 2,000 Sudanese pounds at that time was a wealth, not the wealthiest SPLA man would think of at that time. Okay. And for it to just disappear like that, and it was designated as money for guns, and I was told, unless they were joking, okay, but I believed it the way a child would believe a story. Maybe it was meant for something else. But I stuck by the story they told me. And that is, this story would be by guns that would ward off the danger against people in the villages. You know, the kind of incident that brought my father under the tree. Unthinkable. But then I was stripped of those two stripes, and now I'm a total private. And on top of that, I was sentenced to prison. And this happened in front of the roll call. Our captain was Nyilabod, and his vice was Fabio Dengakol. And they had to do what they had to do. And I had to pay for the mistake I did. So there I went to the southern gate of the camp. And, well, the night came. A beautiful night. Quickly, the moon shone its brightest. I mean, almost like beaming a torchlight on the camp. Something to enjoy for those that could enjoy it. But if the Latins call it a luna, there was something crazy cooking behind that bright, moon. What it was, we didn't know. And the hours passed by, getting brighter. It is 12 o'clock midnight. The evening hand of the clock had gone on retirement. And now the morning hand of the clock has taken over and is still beaming in us that beauty that seemed to have no end. Then we, went on until 3 o'clock. And then when it struck 4, we heard the burst of guns on the eastern part of the camp where the senior officers lived. It was the senior officer Mays that they targeted, killing both Captain Nyilabod and Fabio Deng. And I'm in the prison here. I don't know what happened to the prison guards. They all fled. Then a Zandeman, and that is why I'm such a unionist. That's why I will never discriminate against a fellow South Sudanese, never. It was that Zandeman that gave me the license to live. He came running to preserve his life. He's coming from the eastern part of the camp where the weapons were firing. And when he came and found me tied down, he came and untied me and continued to run his way. He didn't even say a word. He ran west. I followed him. Of course, being a local person, he knows the corners where to branch. So he disappeared from my vision, and I continued. And of course, not knowing, not having been told the secret of the night, I wouldn't know in case there's an attack where people would converge. So I had to call the little God I know, whether it is from my ancestors or a little bit of a Jesus, and somehow they cooperated and they directed me to where people were converged.
Now, Dr. Abiem,
And yeah,
you had you traveled that far and you came
yeah,
back without the guns.
yes.
So, do you regret?
Oh no, regret is when it comes to issue of liberation of South Sudan. I have not regretted anything. You know, the only thing that tells me that I'm still not 9 years old is the state of my knees. I can't run as fast as I should. Otherwise, I would be on the ground combating anything that stands between me and freedom. Okay. And thank God the ligaments have transferred from my knees to my pen. Okay. And therefore, I can use that muscle, whenever I can, if I can. I have spewed out those few words in that little pamphlet, but I should do a lot more because there is a more to my life, informed by that initial trajectory that has not changed at all. It remains the same. And I still remain, married to the idea of one people of South Sudan, many languages, one patrimony, and peace must reign in that country.
Now, South Sudan had been in war for many years. I would term it the war of illiteracy and the war of liberations, of which we attained independence in 2011, which were rough. But there is major war that we are facing. A lot of veterans who fought for liberations are aging, their health is deteriorating, and nothing much has been documented. How would we help to document and to preserve the information before it is lost?
Peter, what you have done, put all the PhDs in South Sudan on one tray in the scale and put your work on quite another. I would say that you would outweigh all those depots of knowledge. They have not done as much as you have collecting stories that are behind the lack of clear policies in South Sudan. If people told their stories somewhere at the upper echelons of governance, people would know that there are people who have suffered for this country, that whatever happened after 1983 was not the beginning of the struggle. The struggle far shoots back into the past. And if we are not careful, it points towards an equally bedeviled future. Only difference is we did not have a hand in creating the checkered history we came from, but we do have a hand in manufacturing an equally checkered future. But we are the authors of that future. And what I shrink to even think of are living veterans that are begging on the streets of Juba, on the streets of Wau, on the streets of Malakal. We do not have the idea of veterans. If you are a true, nationalist, and you did not die, you have not done much. Okay? Those who live, of course, have to inherit everything, including what should have gone to the families of those veterans. I would counsel, or I can't counsel, I would advise rather, that in your position, you have what it takes to solicit assistance from wherever you can to actually create funds for a group of writers that would visit neglected communities in South Sudan who have stories to tell and interview them, capture their stories. It will not all be about war, it would be about a culture had the world heard about it, perhaps could have informed the world. You can visit the 64, tribes, eke out their stories, their unspoken culture, okay? What is their vision? What do they think peace is, okay? Do they delight in war? And bring it to there will be giants, intellectual giants out there to infuse sense in what is a jumble of disorganized stories. There's a lot you have done. There's a lot more you can still do, but as a man, you are limited in your capacity. And therefore, you can only solicit help from those that can afford it.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Raphael. I think we will close the show. To those who have just come, it is a book launch co-authored by Dr. Raphael Abiem and Paul George, who was our facilitator and moderator. Paul George, we really thank you so much.
No, thank you.
And also, I wish you all the best while you are in the UK, and hopefully you're going to come back in a time. Dr. Raphael, so what really motivated you to write a book? Because we have tried to encourage many of our veterans, and in my clans,
3 things happened.
Yeah.
Three things happened to awaken me from a long slumber. And it was that Dr. Francis Deng somehow believes that I can write. And he has been telling me for years and years, write. And I have a reason why I have not been writing. Truth be said, there's a lot of trauma in my own life. For example, I had my brother who was a genius by every standard, shot at a prime age. He was in London University under Professor Richard Gray. He was shot and killed along with 84 people. And that was the man that showed me that people can be intelligent. Okay? I thought I was just a dumb little boy. But then I saw that being too smart too can be a cause of your death. I'm taking a detour to something else. My brother was killed in 1977. And I was then a student in the University of Khartoum. What happened, very few would believe, and that is I took war against books. I decided not to read a single book. I would attend a lecture, get soaked in lectures, come and take the exams. I would pass and I wouldn't touch a book. I wanted to go as illiterate as possible so that when these people come to kill me, they will find me, an empty brain, not much for people to regret. You see? And when I woke up from this, it was overnight that I woke up, and I applied to Harvard somehow. I said, let me go to that school. And I was accepted. Not that I was intelligent, but I told you earlier how my totems cooperated with God and were able to help me and give me a second license of life. And then I moved on to Harvard, law school, and ended up being educated by chance. Okay. Now the question, why do I bring this thing up? That spirit of boycotting reading has a lot to say about why I also boycotted writing. But then Dr. Francis has been egging me on this. And then Jacob Jelakol, an accomplished writer, also had been, pushing me towards that end. And finally comes Peter Lolden, who from the blue decided to send me this load of books. I didn't ask for nothing at all. And said, here it is, compensate your 10 years of your boycotting of books, read these things. And read these things also meant do something. He didn't say it. But the books told me that what Peter was thinking about. So I sat down and put that thing together in a blink and put it out completely unedited. Okay, completely unedited. And there it is. So that was the story behind the writing of that story. And I wrote it actually as a child. Maybe it wasn't there. The sophistication of age and education, I tried not to give it too much of a vent in it. And therefore, I am very linear in the way I narrate the story. No creativity of any kind. It is just things as I saw them. So it came out, a stone of a book. There's not much to it other than that it is gray and hard. That's it. Yeah.
Okay. Before we close our program, Paul, in case if you have any questions, I think you're free to ask.
It's fascinating, the whole thing, Dr. Raphael. I could listen to you for hours. I'm just learning so much, and of course I've read the story, but just listening to you makes it so real and so personal and very moving, of course, as well. Thank you very much for the time and
I thank you a lot too, because who knows, I might solicit your help with the next draft of a story. Sure. Yes.
Yeah. All I do is just maybe fix up on the English a little bit, or
yes.
But that's, I don't change the story. It's your story. It's your words.
Absolutely.
Just that's all I do. So, but
perfect.
I feel very honoured and privileged to be working with you and others as well. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
In few words, Dr. Raphael, can you describe your book in summary and where it can be obtained?
Well, I would recommend that it be read, okay, in the context of warriors from Abyei, not in its isolated version, because it draws in views from an ever afflicted community that some South Sudanese are wishing away. South Sudan is the only country in which there are people who go down on their knees begging God to cut away a piece of their land and giving it to the next neighbor. Okay, that is the most fascinating thing about it. That piece of land, oh my God, take it away from my face. I don't want it. Why don't you give it to Great Britain? They would love it. Why don't you give it to America? They would love it. Why don't you give it to the Chinese? They would love it. But South Sudan, there are individuals that say we are better off without that piece of land. What is so jinx about the land, or is it the people? Okay. It demands, a psychological analysis of individuals that think along those lines. People who wish they were three-legged rather than, or rather one-legged rather than two, that they would walk better with one leg than if they had two legs. I mean, which hospital do you take people like that to? They would be rejected by the most, elitist hospitals in the world, because this man is more than what Americans would call a nut or set people, I would think of. Okay. Abyei, I am going to conclude. If South Sudan runs, we will run after it. And it is not because we love them, it's because we love ourselves. That's who we are, we people of Abyei. And to let go of South Sudan is to actually capitulate to the wishes of those that want to break up South Sudan. And as such, no matter what happens, no matter the ordeal ordinary people live through, they must remember, I have many from Abyei, mostly my relatives, that have sprinkled the land of South Sudan with their blood. And if the nationhood is a tree that grew, I would claim that it was irrigated by the blood of people from Abyei as much as it was irrigated by blood from other nationalities within South Sudan. We, the Dinka, didn't spill more blood than did the Zandi. It is all proportional to the population. One man killed in a tribe of 59 people is equal to the decimation of one section of the entire Dinka land. And therefore, every South Sudanese has a stake in South Sudan. It is those few elements, okay, that are making alienation the basis of a national policies that must be identified and sent to where they want to be, and leave South Sudan alone to figure out how palms would meet palms in greeting, not in combat.
Yeah, once again, dear viewers, we thank Dr. Raphael and Paul George. And in case you need these books, it is available on Amazon America, Amazon Australia, and Amazon UK, and other website. You can also contact us. This is Warriors from Abyei, co-authored by Dr. Raphael and Pierre and other people. Thank you very much. Thanks for listening, and thanks for being here. We will be conducting or having a lot of interviews. We'll be discussing book from time to time. This will be another way of boosting the reading culture, because most of the book published are not being read due to people are very busy. There is time constraint and also a lack of reading culture among our people. It is another war to be fought. So we really thank you. So I will put the songs. Paul Williams and Manyun Dio is one of the authors. Thank you very much for your comment. And next time, expect more of you. If you want to be hosted by us, then please try to join us.
DJ yana liar in a couloir of pop, DJ Gali, Ita Bolden song booming, promoter da Kawina. Titor mading demu titor wala ite wal kuluka biong ding African wal aku kulu ayeto goodbye namye goodbye lati titor mading demu titor wala ite wal kuluka biong ding African wal aku kulu ayeto goodbye namye goodbye lati Gonna nom your mother land in Sudan Gonna nom your mother land in Ghana. I do nom your mother land in Sudan. Gonna nom your mother land in Ghana. Go buy a kilam yakul. Lam yangi when I keep walking. You turn the body man. You turn what you're doing. King I love you. To me, my goal is the biting. Cow what you're doing. To me, my goal is the biting. King I love you. To me, my goal is the biting. Cow what you're doing. To me, my goal is the biting. I love you. To me, my goal is the biting. Cow what you're to me, my goal is the biting. King I love you. To me, my goal is the biting. Cow what you're to me, my goal is the biting.